So before I give the floor to Ian, just a short hello to everybody. My name is Catherine Prentice. I'm the Managing Director for Noble Manhattan Coach Training for the countries in the Balkan region. We have about 11 different countries signed up. And I would like to also introduce to you Ian Jefferis, who is also, besides being the speaker of today, he is the Master Distributor for UK and Ireland for Noble Manhattan Coach Training. And Julia Kurt, who is also the Managing Director for Noble Manhattan Switzerland. So you're seeing a representation. It's a joint venture, obviously, of our European offices. Every month we hold, besides our regular coach training events, which happen almost every week, there is always something going, but most of it is for our current coach students. But we also hold regular open meetings for people who are generally interested in the subjects of coaching. And we're happy to share any of our knowledge, techniques, also networking. It allows people to fellowship and grow in their understanding and awareness of coaching, coach trends. And today our focus will be a specific niche of coaching, which has to do with children and adolescents and coaching in schools, something which we as a company have discovered as big necessity nowadays, especially when the world is more and more volatile, and the way it affects the young people and the younger generation are unique, that we're facing a lot for the first time. Being the leading coach company in Europe, we have also taken brave steps in leading the way in preempting some of these issues connected to the coaching and the care of children, adolescents, and the younger generation. We have invited Ian Jefferis, who is also not only a very experienced coach, but also a parent and a grandparent. He's also the co-author of one of the programs by Noble Manhattan Coaching that has to do with training people to be professional child coaches and adolescent coaches. Ian, I was just going to pass the mic to you, and you can tell us a few more words about yourself and take us into the workshop.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Catherine. And welcome, everybody. Welcome to Noble Manhattan Coaching webinar of today. Catherine has very kindly invited me to talk about something of which I have rather sort of developed a passion now over the last 6-7 years. And so if I start getting terribly enthusiastic, just put a note in the chat and tell me to calm down a bit. I will try and keep my my speech steady, because I appreciate that there are 12 different countries registered. And while I expect that everybody can speak English, sometimes what I have to say is about the United Kingdom's education system, and therefore may not completely translate across. I'll try and do my best to catch myself if I start using acronyms and things like that. But if not, then just put them in the chat and we will cover them at some stage, or we will try to. Anyway, a bit about me. Forgive me for one while I just bring up my notes. Okay, as Catherine said, my name is Ian Jefferis, and I've been with Noble Manhattan now for 7 years. In fact, my time goes back further than that with Noble Manhattan, because I used to run a print shop. And back in 2003, a gentleman came in to get some photocopying done. And he'd been in several times, and I just happened to get there as I watched him open a packet of, well, as it turned out to be business cards. I thought, well, I don't recognize that packet. I wonder what he's here for. And then he said, these are awful. I thought, what have I done? And then I found that actually he got them from another company. And so we quickly understood the situation, sorted him out, and sent him on his way. And that was my meeting with Gerard O'Donovan. Since when I've done a lot of printing for Noble Manhattan. And then in 2015, I took over the master distributorship of the United Kingdom and Ireland. And shortly after that, I met a lady by the name of Raquel Leonello, who is a Noble Manhattan graduate. And we then started working together on an adolescent and child coaching program. But more of that later. About me, I live in Weymouth on the south coast of England. I have a beautiful view of the English Channel, and I look out today on a lovely sunny day watching the windsurfers. I'm not a windsurfer myself, but had I been a bit younger, I might have taken it up. I am married. I have two older children in their 30s, and they have three children and two children between them. And I also have two teenagers, aged 16 and 14. And I saw the other day that this age group, 14 to 19 in the United Kingdom, has been called Generation CUB, C-U-B, standing for COVID, Ukraine, and Brexit. And of the three, it has been quite turmoil. And it has affected our teenagers, but then it has probably affected the teenagers across the world. And this is the point. So my career to date, well, I spent 25 years in the United Kingdom Armed Forces as a helicopter pilot, as a leader, a manager, a decision maker. I spent 20 years in the retail business as a small business owner. I had a printing shop, as I've already mentioned, and also I became involved in selling school uniform. And so therefore I got to know the local schools quite well. I got to know the local school children quite well as well. I spent 7 years, as I said, as Noble Manhattan Master Distributor. I spent 6 years adolescent and child coaching program and 2 years as an accredited practitioner coach, although I have been coaching for quite some time before that. Now, if you all add all that up together, I'm about 78, which is not true. So there is some overlap there. In fact, of course, the 6 years adolescent child coaching program lead and the 2 years accredited practitioner coach I spent under Noble Manhattan. So that's me basically. So why am I interested in adolescent and child coaching? Well, it's because I met Raquel, who came to us and said, I've got this program and I want to demonstrate it to everybody. I want people to become school coaches. And she herself has been a school coach for some 12 years. And so I listened, and the more I heard from her, the more I understood how beneficial coaching can be to our young people. I don't know what it is in your country, but in our country, it's so much focus at the moment on counseling and therapy, while they are very credible programs in their own right, and some people do need to go to counseling, some people do need the therapy because they've got really serious problems that need to be investigated. But an awful lot of the situation, people want coaching, and coaching can actually help with sorting out a lot of the mental health issues at an early stage, provided they're caught earlier. But I'm just going to go on to some definitions because I'm starting to use words like therapy and counseling and coaching, and I will also bring in mentoring. So the definitions I'm using today, effectively, of therapy, and this is straight out of the dictionary, that there's the treatment of somebody with mental or physical illness without the use of drugs or operations. And counseling is a talking therapy that involves a trained therapist listening to you and helping you to find ways to deal with emotional issues. So a lot of what therapy and counseling are about is providing information and effectively telling a lot of their clients effectively what to do. Now, coaching doesn't do this. Coaching is very much more about ensuring that those clients work for themselves. I am not an expert in my client. I'm not an expert in my client's problems. I may be able, and this is where I am an expert, in listening to them and asking questions to help them resolve their own issues. And that's twofold, really. It helps them because not only do they have to think deeply, but they own the problem. And if they own the problem, they're so much more likely to carry it out. If somebody tells you what to do, you think, yeah, I'll do that. And then you think, nah, can't be bothered. Or if anything goes wrong, yeah, somebody else told me what to do, so it's their fault. If you've told yourself what to do, for a start, you own the situation. And secondly, you are your expert. You know what's going on. And because you own it, you are therefore much more likely to fulfill it. Now, I'm probably talking to a load of coaches who say, yeah, I know that. But I expect there are some listening today who don't. And so that is why I want to ensure that people understand coaching. And so what my definition of coaching is, it's interesting, I can't find a real definition of coaching that everybody agrees with. But my definition is that using considered questioning and deep listening, coaching helps clients to discover and determine their goals and to enthuse them to move from where they are in their lives to where they want to be, and in a non-judgmental and adviceless way. I don't advise, I don't judge. I try not to judge. It's always very difficult because I'm sure we all judge to a certain extent, but I don't want to be seen to be judging. And adviceless, my clients are the people who make their decisions about themselves. But I'm also going to bring in mentoring here, because actually when we start talking about adolescent and child coaching, mentoring is actually quite important. And now mentoring is different to coaching. It's different to counseling, it's different to therapy. Mentoring is sharing knowledge, skills, and experiences with a view to supporting another person's development. Now, we all know teenagers, we all know children. You ask them a difficult question and you get the answer, I don't know. And so either you can explore why they don't know and spend a lot of time doing it, or you can start helping them by suggesting things and hopefully getting the conversation going. So what are the problems with adolescents and children? Why is it different to just general coaching? Well, there are a number of reasons, and the problems that we come across is the young brain, for starters. You know, just when they are getting together, they're going through adolescence and things like that, the brain decides to reset. I mean, it's not a very good time to do that, but if you're going to do it, then I suppose it's the best time. It resets in preparation to becoming an adult. And by reset, I mean, it goes to mush. And if it goes to mush, then all the neuro pathways, not all of them by any manner of means, but a number of the neuro pathways just sort of come to a dead end. It's why teenagers don't look much further than the following day. It's why teenagers have that bravado that says, I'm going to go and do this. At times, it's quite useful because their judgment is not clouded by what could happen. It can also be highly dangerous because their judgment being clouded by what might happen, they go and make some very silly mistakes. We had one recently, year before last, we had some adolescents deciding to jump off a cliff, which was all very well until one of them hit the bottom and had to be transported away by air ambulance. Just don't think further than, let's get the adrenaline going, let's jump off this cliff. Into the sea, I might add. Another problem we've got is communication. Now, effectively, there's the three levels of communication, or I'm going to look at them as three levels. And this is the same in all coaching. But communication these days is so important. It is everywhere, and it is so rapid. You don't have time necessarily to consider the answer to the question or the situation. And with social media, which is everywhere, you just don't have the time. You see a message, the word, you don't necessarily understand the emotion behind the word or the sentence. The person who wrote it perhaps has not thought seriously about what they've written, and so it can be misconstrued. The voice, better than the word, because it carries emotion with it. And so therefore, it's much easier to understand the context in which those words are given. And then there's the awareness. There's actually being with the people concerned, with the person concerned, where, especially as adults, we've got that sixth sense. A lot of the times as coaches, we've certainly got that sixth sense of saying, something isn't quite computing here. I know what they're saying. I know how they're saying it. But the awareness is flowing through. It may be that there's visual cues. It may be just that general feeling of something's not quite right here. And then there's a conflict, which perhaps the client isn't aware of. So you've got the word, you've got the voice, you've got the awareness. And if you're just working with social media and texting, you've only got the word. And so miscommunication is all over the place. And a number of teenage problems start from that miscommunication. They see something written down, they decide their friends don't like them, and the world ends tomorrow as far as they're concerned. They get that FOMO, that fear of missing out. They've got to be on the end of their social media just in case they're being talked about, or just in case they're not being talked about, or somebody else is being talked about, and they've got to know that that is, because the following day, if they are not aware, then they can make a big mistake. Another problem, information. Now, as adults, we are blessed with experience, and a lot of the information we can identify as true. Or can we identify it as true? Is it in fact fake? And if we're having those problems, then think about the children and the teenagers. They haven't got that insight to say and to question, is that the case? And so therefore you've got another way of building stress within a child of the information. And there is, again, so much of it. You just don't know which bit to take in. And another problem is time. Well, I've already mentioned this, we're talking about instantaneous communication, instantaneous information, but time. Parents and others lead busy lives, busier today than they ever have been, it would seem. And a number of them forget that actually they've got children who need them and who need to have time for them to help them resolve a number of issues. Are they getting it? Generally, I think I would like to say yes, but there are a number and a significant number of children who don't get that opportunity. And it's not about social boundaries. It happens across the spectrum, but for different reasons perhaps, but it happens. You get the high earners, the high achievers who have little time for their children because they're too busy earning highly and achieving highly. You get others who find themselves as parents and really don't know how to cope. And so where is all this leading? It's leading to a whole generation who have now been, had their schooling basically banjaxed for the last 2 years, who've had their social lives ruined for the last 2 years. And it has become apparent that actually their social lives are very, very important. Yet there's been this problem with COVID. Yet we've got problems with conflict in Europe, serious conflict in Europe. And let's say some of you are closer to it than I am, but it's there. And because the information, because the news is all around us, there's this group of children thinking, what next? What's going to happen? Now, some can cope. Great. Some already have mental health issues, which needs to take on therapy, counseling, and things like that. Others may just have a bit of a wobble. And actually, they need somebody to talk to. If they haven't got people to talk to, where can they turn? So that is a lot of a problem with adolescents, with teenagers, with children. So how can we get round this? Well, what are the requirements? Well, we need to support these children and adolescents to cope with their everyday lives. And that's just that's their present. That is their here and now, their everyday lives. We need to prepare the growing generations for their place in the world as responsible adults and parents. We've got to give them those tools now so they can take them forward, because after all, they will be ruling the world. They will be running the world when we are gaining our pensions. We're going to have to leave the running of the world to that generation. So best we give them the tools for it. And we need to prevent and to reduce the mental health challenges that they're facing, and which are particularly apparent today. I say prevent, I say reduce. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could put in a program that would offer that prevention of mental health challenges? Sadly, I don't think it'll happen. To reduce them, by all means. Perhaps we can get that program in that will teach our children to understand where they're at, to develop that resilience, to acknowledge that performance and go ahead, to understand the communication aspects, to have that social relationship, not only with others, but with themselves, to understand themselves, because a lot of that is missing. So why is adolescent and child coaching different to normal coaching? This is a big question, because in Noble Manhattan, we think of training one type of coach, a coach that can do everything. What a wonderful idea. Some people say there's 54 different types of coach. Others will say, well, there's one type of coach and 54 different ways of marketing it. So you could have a performance coach, you can have a resilience coach, you can have a relationship coach, you can have a mindfulness coach. You can have, you can even have a dating coach, as I found out. So what is the coaching all about? And why is it different? Why has Noble Manhattan, who's really only had one line of coaching, now said, actually, there's more than that. There's coaching adults, there's coaching adolescents and children. Well, it's been brought to us by Raquel, as I've mentioned, and it became obvious then that actually, while the core elements of coaching are exactly the same, it's about questioning, it's about listening. But the way you talk and listen to adolescents and way you talk to children is different. It's different for the children, it's different for the adolescents, it is different for the adults. And that's why we've looked carefully at this and said, yeah, we need an adolescent child coaching program. We need, with a young client, we need to be able to speak their language. I mean, okay, I'm 65. It's difficult for me to speak the language of a teenager. Fortunately, I have two who teach me, so that's good. But not, there are a number of people who don't have that. Rapport development, and this is probably the biggest issue. You've got to be quick. If you don't develop that rapport within the first 2 or 3 minutes, you've lost them. You've got to get in there. You've got to get them on side. You've got to be able for them to open up to you, to respect you, to understand where you're coming from, and to know that you can help them. That is why you can't be judgmental. They see adults all the time. They see adults and their parents. They see adults at school. They see teachers who teach. And if you work in a school, if you are not very careful, you get branded one of the teaching staff. And they have this, a lot of them perhaps may not think highly of their teaching staff. They don't want to be at school. So you've got to be quick to develop that rapport. You've got to be able to get alongside your clients quickly, not get them alongside you, get alongside them. You've got to be able to understand your client, and that depends so much on the age group. You don't talk to a 4-year-old the way you talk to a 6-year-old, the way you talk to a 12-year-old, the way you talk to an 18-year-old. It's all different. And if you're going to be a coach of, let's just say, adolescents, which can span 7 years, even the difference between an 11-year-old, 15-year-old, 18-year-old, it's all different. And so therefore, you've got to be so adaptable. Their understanding of life is so much more naive than ours. And we have to try and remember that. We have to remember that they haven't developed the experience yet to know what we know. Their life experience is limited. They don't know half the time the errors that they can make. And sometimes they have to make those errors in order to learn. Of course, it's so much easier to learn from other people's mistakes, but actually sometimes you've got to make your own. And then you've got to be able to walk away and say, right, what have I learned from making that error? But for a teenager who makes a basic error, they don't understand enough to say, right, let's put that behind, let's park that, and let's go and look for the future. What can we learn from the past? What can we take forward to the future? So, which is why I produced an ebook, which was learn from the past, look to the future. And we can live for the present as well. And talking about going back to rapport development, the lifespan of a child is short. Perhaps it's short to even non-existent. And I noticed one of the questions that came in of, how does coaching work with ADHD students? And I'll come back to that later. So what are the benefits of coaching to students? Well, if you can get pupils to solve their own problems, to make their own decisions and to accomplish their own goals, that's empowerment. That makes them feel good about themselves. But there are times when you've actually got to say, hey, you solved that problem yourself. Well done. You made that decision. Well done. You did what you said you were going to do. Brilliant. And so you've got to give them that confidence, especially if they come into coaching. They may well be lacking self-esteem, and you've got to be able to help them to build it. Coaching will help prevent, it will help intercept, it'll help to support life and well-being issues before they become more serious. If we can actually develop a program, and I'll come on to that later, which we can take into schools right from the word go and say, we're going to talk about resilience today, but you don't know it, 5-year-old, as resilience. We're going to tell you how to be strong, how to be helpful. And basically with a program in their own language, and then develop that through the years. And by the time they become teenagers, and by the time they come out of the education system, they are well-rounded, they are much more developed. And it's not just living life skills, these are leadership skills as well. Coaching is non-stigmatized. If you say to a child, you're going to go and see a counselor tomorrow, oh, I can't do that, my friends won't like me. I can't go and see a therapist because what will I tell my friends? They'll think I've got a problem. Coaching, fortunately, because of its roots, because of its place in sport, is non-stigmatized. Many people in the world who are role models for these children have coaches one way or the other. It may be a professional tennis player, it may be a professional footballer, but the majority of them have coaches. I'm not just talking about sports coaches, I'm talking about mind coaches. I'm talking about people who help them with their resilience, people who help them with their performance, people who help them with their lives. But it doesn't stand on its own. It complements counselling and other support services. There are times when, especially with dealing with something like trauma, that is a specialist issue. and I don't recommend that coaches get involved in trauma unless it's fairly lightweight. But it's a matter for the therapists to cope with trauma, perhaps to cope with self-harm, perhaps to cope with other things which are getting just too big and unwieldy for the character, that they actually do need that additional help. So coaching will complement counselling and support services. It doesn't mean to say that coaches will suddenly say, oh, can't do that, you've got to go and see a counsellor. It's far more gentle than that. But it's knowing how to signpost these children towards other support if that other support is required. And there are a number of instances where it is. It also provides an additional layer of support for basic issues. In the United Kingdom, our counselling services are overstretched, especially our youth counselling services, and children and adolescents can wait for weeks just to get an appointment, to get a first appointment. So in that sort of situation, coaching them can help, because it can help nibble away at problems. It can help the problems getting any worse. It can help reduce and resolve other problems which may be part of the issue. And I've got a client, and I'm not breaking any confidences here, and they are self-professed perfectionists, and they're seeing a therapist because of the anxiety. And cause of the anxiety is this perfectionism, is this worry that I can't do everything absolutely perfectly. But actually working on the perfectionism and saying, hey, let's see what we could do about this. We've actually started reducing the anxiety. Reducing it, not eliminating it, but reducing it nevertheless. So we talked about coaching, coaching adolescents, coaching children. I've mentioned schools, and a number of the United Kingdom schools do have coaches. They're very few. I wish it was every single school had a coach, had a mind coach, because the benefits would be tremendous. Because one of the problems that all our schools are facing is student performance. If there are league tables, then that's something you've got to watch. And if not, as I said earlier, COVID has caused havoc with teaching, with the education system over the last 2 years. I know this, my children tell me this. And coaching, if we can actually get these children empowered, we can improve their resilience and things like that, they start to feel that things are going okay. And if things are starting to feel okay, then their performance will improve. Not might improve, will improve. So improve student performance. It can offer structured sessions, coaching sessions that are focused, they're time limited, and importantly, they're cost effective. Because again, counselling and therapy can run on for weeks on end, months on end, perhaps years on end. Coaching, you tend to look at particular goals, specific goals, and aim for them. And even if it's a huge, great big goal, perhaps you drop it down into smaller goals. So it's time limited. You can say, well, look, you've got that far. Now try and work on your own for a bit. If you want, come back to me, but let's try and work on. Because they're more determined, they're now more resilient, their communication is better, their behavior is better. And so we're improving student behavior. It goes without saying that we're reducing stress and anxiety as coaches, especially if you've got perhaps a senior member of a friend clique who is absolutely stressed out. Go to a coach, finds a way of reducing that stress relatively straightforwardly, tells everybody else, and the anxieties fall away. It improves student attendance. We have a number of children who just physically, or mentally, they can't go to school. They just cannot cope with that stress at the moment. And it's probably the same in other countries across the world. It's not just the United Kingdom, I'm sure of that. So if they're being coached, if they're improving their performance, if the stress and anxiety is being reduced and their behavior is better, their attendance will automatically be better. And so now you're getting a school that is much more empowered. The students are much more on side. I'm not saying that every student is now a top achiever. Won't happen. Pity, but it won't. The stress of the staff reduces. You now have a much more alive and alert student body. And so the staff don't have to work so hard at discipline, at trying to keep order in class and things like that. Their stress levels reduce. Their stress levels reduce. Their absence reduces. Their absence reduces. You don't have to keep on finding supply teachers. You don't have to keep on firefighting who's going to look after which class on which day. And perhaps it will stop the drain of teachers who are saying, enough, I've had enough of the classroom. And therefore, money is saved because you're not having to recruit teachers all the time. So there's benefits to the school. So what is the solution? Well, if we can provide suitable lessons throughout the school system, then, and throughout the school system, it's a little bit every year, and they get used to that. Now, it can be coach-based. It doesn't have to be taught. And this is perhaps the main thing. Effectively, the next generations become self-coaching. They understand the need for the awareness. They need to develop the life skills to cope with the communication. And that communication problems are not nearly as difficult in the past as they are today. I know I'm old, but I do remember the time when in the Navy, we would sail into a port, the mail would come on board. And we would have our time in port to answer all the mail, think about the answers that we needed for the questions they asked, and then provided it got sent out before we left that port, all was fine. So we had time to think. But these days, the message comes in, you don't have time to think. And so therefore, the considered solution may not be the one that you send out. It may be 24 hours, 48 hours, a week later that you think, actually, wish I hadn't said that now, but it's too late. But this coming generation, if they are aware of the situation, they can make the best use of that situation. They may have to think about an answer, in which case, rather than answer the question immediately, they must go through the decision-making process of saying, is an answer needed now? If it isn't, when do I have to make that answer? What can I do between now and then in order to make sure that answer is as good as I can make it? And so therefore, they're not immediately responding to the communication, they're thinking about it. And therefore, they can affect a better solution. Now, obviously, there are times when the question needs answering there and then. Okay, decision made. I've got to make that decision. I've got to answer that now to the best of my ability. And that is also important. But also the receiver of that answer has got to remember that the question was posed and the answer was given to the best of the ability of the answerer. And also with these children, with these adolescents, they will realize that if they pose that question and that time limit, then they've got to remember that that might not be the best solution. Developing a relationship with the self, getting to understand themselves is very, very important. To know that their brain is a mush as a teenager, to understand why they can't think further than tomorrow or further than the next minute sometimes. If they understand that, they can cope with it so much better. But not only do they understand, if they understand themselves, they understand others better as well. If they make allowances for themselves because they know allowances must be made, they're more ready to make those allowances for others and not just take the others immediately from what they read, from what they see, from what they hear, but give it some thought and to question, is this really the case? If we can give them those life skills of resilience, and I've spoken to a number of employers and they're all saying the same thing, that the young adults coming into work these days have not got the resilience to stay. Importantly, have they got the resilience to have a relationship, to develop a family? Have they got the resilience to do that? Can they cope with the ups? I'm sure they can cope with the ups, but can they cope with the downs? And how can they cope with the downs? If they have that life skill, then they know that it's a down and it will get better most of the time. Nothing's perfect, but at least they know. And performance. How can they gain the best performance? Whether it be sitting exams, whether it be acting on stage, whether it be presenting a debate or something like that. How can they give the best performance? It's something that a coach can help them with, but it's something that life skills, if taught, if I'm crossing everything now, aren't I? If the life skills can be coached, not taught, then they understand them better. They understand themselves better. And that's through the school system. Now, how can parents do that? Because I expect there are a number of parents listening to this now. How can parents do that? Well, actually, in the same way. And if they can do that, then so much better, because they can carry on the message. But we can't expect all parents to be able to do this. So where is the common ground? The common ground is in the school. If the school can support the development of life skills, albeit at the loss of some of the academics, some very small amount of the academics, and that the parents can then support what's going on, we can help this next generation really cope with the world that we are leaving them. And that, to me, is incredibly important. So coaching in schools is safe, it's reliable, it needs to be accessible. We've talked already that it needs to be non-stigmatized. We've said it's solution focused, it's cost effective. It can be empowering to the whole school. I've put down here, it can be empowering to staff and pupils. It can be empowering to the parents as well, because some of it will actually get home through the pupils. It can be adaptable and flexible. It can be integrative. It can be holistic. It can be everything. It can be complementary and helpful to the other support services which are still required. And it can be helpful to staff on a personal level as well as a team level. So what's my dream for coaching in schools? It's a triangular structure, actually. At the top of this dream, at the top of a school, you would have a fully qualified, accredited adolescent child coach, depending what the age group is, and they would be working with the school's pastoral and support teams. In the middle, senior leadership, perhaps, heads of years, depending on the school system. In the middle, you have a number of teaching staff or support staff who are coach trained, and they're trained to work one-to-one with the students involved because they need that a little bit of extra support. And at the classroom level, wouldn't it be wonderful if all teachers were trained to that basic coaching level to be able to help the individual child? So a child could go to them and say, look, I've got this small problem. And the teacher who knows that child can say, okay, tell me about it. And then the teacher can think, yeah, okay, we can sort this out at my level. Or we can say, right, I think you ought to go and see somebody else, and let's go and see so-and-so, and they will hopefully be able to help you. So it's a case of getting in there early. And of course, if you can get in there early with a lot of these mental health issues, they can fade into insignificance, or the child, the adolescent, can learn to cope and work with them. So that effectively is my talk on adolescent and child coaching. Yes, it is different to adults. It is different because it's the way that you communicate with adolescents and children. And none of us is perfect at doing that. Well, I wish I was. I had 2 adolescents. They're now adults themselves with their own families. I learned an awful lot from that. And now I'm hoping that I can provide a better solution for the 2 teenagers I've got. But very frequently, parents perhaps are almost too close to the situation and are far too ready to tell their children what to do. So perhaps parents are very good at coaching other people's children. And perhaps, I don't know how you feel, but I find it's much easier to wash up in somebody else's sink. If it's my own sink, I don't enjoy it at all. If I'm helping somebody else, I love it. It's much easier to do somebody else's gardening. It's much easier to help others with problems than it is to help yourself with problems. At least that's what I find. I doubt I know I'm not unique at that, but others may have different views. So in conclusion, yes, there is a requirement for adolescent and child coaches. And I say adolescents and children because there is a difference in the groups. There's a different way of dealing with things. There are different ways of dealing with every individual. But if you're going to draw boundaries, then perhaps that is the best way to draw them. Now, the way we draw it is on the UK education system. We have primary education, we have secondary education, and the boundary is age 11, which is round about the start of adolescence. And so that's why we've identified those particular areas. Some people want to work with children and adolescents all the way through. Some people say, well, children don't need it. I'd argue that point. I think children do need it. And there's one thing I was going to mention, and that is mentoring. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this before. Now, when coaching an adult, you tend not to mentor. You tend not to tell them of your experience and to pass on your experience. With children and adolescents, you find yourself doing it a lot of the time. But provided you tell them what they're doing and provided they're the ones who make the decisions, then things can progress swimmingly. Provided you don't tell them what to do and that they make their own decisions on that, it helps them to develop their decision-making and to grow into fine, upstanding adults. And with that remark, I think it's time for questions. If anybody's still here. Any questions, anybody? Julia, you're normally very good at passing the questions around. You're muted. Flora.
Give me 1 sec. Yeah, so I see. Yeah, I will do. Thank you very much. It has been very interesting. But I have prior. So she needs to go. Hope to see you soon. So actually, we don't have any questions at the moment. But I see Flora. Flora is raising her hand. Hi, Flora. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Ian, for this presentation. I turned off the camera because I had to eat something. Sorry, while you're working so hard for us at this time. Okay, let's start with this. One, what you've thought of, I mean, maybe collectively or you by yourself, I don't know, is like an answer to my prayers right now. Okay, I see that I have other Greek citizens here. Nicola Christodoulou is here. Hello, Nicola, very nice meeting you. And there was another person that left. I don't know, is there any other Greek in this Zoom? No, not at the moment.
Well, not showing themselves anyway.
Because okay, I think it's very important right now to do such a thing, especially at Greek school. uh, I don't know what Nicola's experience is and what is his profession. I'm an educational psychologist, okay, and business psychologist, and I also teach in the University of Derby in UK right now online. So I started and worked initially in UK with the counseling services. I worked for the children's services. And I went back home hopeful that this will work in Greek schools. But 10, 11 years have passed and nothing's happening. Okay, nothing's happening. And now, after these 2 horrible years for the whole world with COVID, etc., we see the detrimental consequences of lockdowns, of too much internet use, not internet use, computer game, video game playing, even online teaching sometimes. I mean, it goes really wrong, especially for the younger age. So what I did this summer was to take some of the UK's principles I saw, which pleased me a lot, is that they put in the curriculum, and please Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, they put in the curriculum mandatory lesson of feelings, Did they? Yes. So I did that in a summer school in Athens because I meddle with my municipality, and I offered that as a game, And I saw how happy the teachers were, the teachers and the children. So to conclude, okay, what you offer, I would like to understand what I understood your vision. I completely agree with it. And what I want to understand what it is that we can do here today with you, with the specific Manhattan company, and what is on the table. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I mentioned the adolescent and child coaching program that we're running. Now, there's basically there is 3 levels of that, and they center around this program of lessons, which has been developed by Raquel Leonello, who I mentioned earlier, and they cover a lot of what I was talking about: the resilience to communication, the performance, self-esteem, relationships, and so on and so forth, in each and every year. So for the adolescents from age 11 to 18, there are 50 different programs covering 8 subjects per year. Now, my maths doesn't quite work out that way, but it does actually work out. We say 50, it's probably 54, but one of them you can use for every year. And so therefore, as they develop through the system, they learn about performance for their year. So that's age 11, age 12, age 30, in a slightly different way. And so therefore, they are developing this time. And so you are talking about 8 lessons per year. That's all, 8 lessons per year. And I strongly believe that if schools can do that, those 8 lessons could be easily found, because the students themselves would be more alert and more receptive. And so therefore, the loss of, say, 4 maths lessons and 4 English lessons, in our case, would not be really missing. And so much better spent giving them those life skills to be able to cope and to learn. So we have a foundation program which goes through, and as well as teaching coaching basics to adolescents, and particularly the difference between adult coaching and adolescent coaching. It is very basic though. We go through, forgive me. we go through each individual lesson, especially looking at the activities and giving some more information, basically, of how to run these things, what they're about, whether it be a performance energy star, whether it be sleep patterns, whether it be sort of learning to cope with others, whether it be anti-bullying, all those sort of things. And that way, and that is a live online program. It runs starting on the 25th of April for the adolescents, and we've got another one in September for the children, for children coaching, and we can develop that. It's designed for teachers, designed for parents, to be able to use these, and for coaches and counselors and psychologists who have clients, one-to-one clients. Then we go into a little bit more detail in the certificate course, which builds on the foundation with some with how to then take it on into one-to-one work and so on. And all these courses are accredited with the International Authority for Professional Coaching and Mentoring. And so that's how we offer the program. For those who wish to be coaches right from the word go, then we offer the practitioner coach diploma, and we then bolt into it either the adolescent element or the child element, or both in some cases, so that the whole package means that when the student graduates, when our students graduate, they graduate as practitioner and adolescent coaches. They can coach adults, they can coach children, depending on which age group they're talking about. They can coach adults, they can coach adolescents. They could become family coaches, accredited family coaches. How about that? And yes, I think there is a requirement for family coaches, but very much more difficult to arrange, because sometimes it's the family that's causing the problem. They don't know it. But some families don't want to know it either. So it can be very tricky, that one, very tricky.
So you sell training?
Yeah, we do. I can send you further details.
I think
she's dropped off.
She just dropped off, I guess.
Yeah,
she just dropped off. But let me see. There is nothing in the chat as questions for you, Ian, at this point.
Okay.
Anyone else who would like to raise a question, please raise your hands, unmute yourself. Yes. Nicolaus, yes, Nico, go Nico.
Nico, whatever you want. I'm from Greece too. I'm from Greece too, but I'm living in Sofia, Bulgaria.
Okay.
And I'm doing the practitioner coach diploma.
Good for you.
Good. Yes, I mean, very interesting, because I have also daughters that they are the ages 12, 10, and younger is coming, almost 5 years old. And as you understand now, I'm start facing all these issues, passing all these years with the difficult, these last 2 years with the COVID. What I would like to ask you, it is, when we do the coaching diploma, we assume that our clients, as the book says, let's say, they are whole beings, creative and resourceful. Can we assume the same for a child or an adolescent?
Yes, you can, but there is the difference of they are creative. In fact, they're probably more creative. But then you've got to counter that with the experience that they have, and their creativity is absolutely wonderful. And of course, they can teach us some things as well. But then they're actually, almost the experts, and they'll come up and say, "Well, why can't you do that?" And it's a very good question. It can catch you out sometimes. Think, well, actually, why can't you do that? Yeah, it's a very good question. But working with them is so rewarding, because they, once you've got over that rapport situation, once you've got them on side, you can really feel that they're ready to make those decisions and to go for it. You get others who are really stuck, and like some adults as well, but of course they haven't got the experience to understand about being unstuck. and you have to sort of help them and build them and develop and help them develop themselves, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
But
You just to chip in there, it's really creative to work with them, because I've got as well, some adolescents that I'm coaching, and I did the same program. And what we use in those tools is really creative tools, really a lot drawing as well, right? And this girl who's got a bit of a problem, not herself actually, with her sibling. She needed to express her emotions. It was dragging her down. And I told her, okay, draw something. Draw what are your emotions. And she came up with lots of stuff. Some part lightning with stars, some part which is more dark, and her emotions came out. And we talked about it. And that even helped her to articulate what she's feeling. She feels anger towards her sibling, that she can't take her own act together. We're talking about anorexia, etc. So it's really getting into this other stuff. And it's so rewarding to see that step forward with these young people, even that they were saying, you know what, now I understand. And helping her to cope with communication outside, because everyone is asking, and she got fed up. How do I cope with this? So we talked about how she can do. And again, as Ian mentioned, it's a bit of mentoring as well, not too much, because we want the kid to come up with their own solution. But sometimes you need to guide a bit. So it's rewarding. I loved it. I mean, I love it all the time. It's absolutely amazing. And what I'm trying to do now, Ian, as well, to create an academy, a parents' academy for the Turkish people here in Geneva and Switzerland, because I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland, because there are a lot of integration problems. They're all expats. The kids don't have sense of belonging. They're 2 years here, 2 years there. And then there is another bucket where the Turkish people or the Turkish students don't even feel part of the Swiss culture, neither part of the culture of Turkey. They're in the middle to find the identity, and the values. They don't even know about the values and the communication that Ian mentioned. Just gave my 5 cents, because I'm dealing one-to-one now. So it's amazing. It's a different world. And I see, Nico, do you have any further questions? Because I see that Flora is just in. She wanted to.
Yeah, maybe another one related to, if I understood correctly, first of all, I don't want to make any mistake. I suppose that, Ian, you suggest that for parents, it's better to avoid, not to avoid, no, okay, but it's not, it's better somebody else to do the coaching to the children. Is it, am I right? Or
can be. If I start coaching my children, they'll start telling me off.
No, the thing is, what I'm doing actually, exactly, with my intent is that the parents understand their own behavior towards their kids, so they have an open communication channel. That's the intention. And they understand, because as parents, and I did the same, we have expectations, right? And sometimes we're really harsh, and then oof, and then it goes bleh, and no one understands each other, and then smashing the door, you are blah blah, and they don't talk. And we don't want that as parents. It's our precious ones. We want the best for them, but it's our precious ones. And that's what I try to give the parents, a bit of a toolkit to understand the brain of the teenagers and what you can do as a parent to understand better. So some tips and tricks and tools, which is high level to cope better. But it's not going to be replacing a coach, because we are going further in depth, and the kids can open up when you create that rapport and the open space and safe space that they need.
Okay. Thanks.
I noticed there was a question from Ralitza about coaching with a parent. Alongside a child. That is a tricky one, and it's one that we discuss almost all the time. Is how can that work? I think to a certain extent it depends on what the parent is after, and it depends on the problem, because really, if one can work individually with the child without the parent there, the child is much more likely to open up. rather than to worry about what the parent might be thinking, because after all, they've got to live with the parent. And so it's a tricky one. Most coaches that I know will try and say that they will coach the child without the parent, and they will report back to the parent anything that they can that is pertinent, because there's a certain amount of confidentiality. It may be to the problem with the child, or the child's perception of the problem may be the parent. And so therefore, they're not going to open up in order to get that done. So it's a very difficult one, Relitsa, very difficult indeed. And there's no formal answer to whether you should work with the child or with the adult. If you can explain to the adult what you're trying to do, then perhaps there's more chance that they will accept and trust you. It depends on how you feel that they're going to be. It may be that here's the answer to the family coaching, that you can coach the child and you can also coach the adult, or both adults. It's a very tricky one. It's a very good point.
I have a question. Can I?
Sure.
I'm also in PCD program. When you work with the teenager, do you need to ask parents for permission for doing that? And do you have experience with group coaching of in teenager ages? And how it works?
Okay, yeah. Do you have to ask the parent for permission? Well, a lot of this will come from, especially on the professional side, of who's paying for the coaching. And if the parent's coaching, the parent is paying for the coaching, then I think it can be assumed that the parent is giving permission. If it's through school, sorry, you're mute. You're muted at the moment. Okay. If it's through the school, then that's the schools in the United Kingdom. The schools have what is known as in loco parentis. They are the parent while the child is at school. And so therefore, they can authorize coaching without telling the parent. And this may be one of the situations that the child doesn't want to tell the parent because of problems at home or something like that. And so therefore, the answer to that one is, if it's within school time, then they don't have to tell the parent, but that is not so much the coach's responsibility as the school's responsibility. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much indeed, because in Bulgarian system, as far as I'm involved with there is a special requirements that no matter the child is at school, it needs to have ensured a declaration agreement from parents whether to see psychologist or whether to attend any kind of coaching or other trainings which are out of the school curriculum. So this is very important, that what you've shared already. And in terms of a group coaching of teenager ages, how it works in UK, what is your experience? Because in some cases, I personally believe that there might be a good idea to have small groups and we can coach teenagers with who face similar problems.
Yeah, I think that's that's a very good point. Yes, of course you can group coach, and indeed the program that I was talking about does just that, because you can take these programs into the classroom and to develop that awareness. And of course, if you've got a group of, let's say, 10 adolescent, 10, 15-year-olds, all suffering from low self-esteem or something like that, then actually a group therapy session can be very, very useful. because they can feed off one another. Now, personally, going back to the, do you tell the parents? My feeling is that if I can persuade my client to tell their parents what they're doing, then so much the better. If they don't want to, then that's up to them. There is something known as the Gillick competency, where we had a particular case where did the child have enough experience or understanding to be able to go for coaching, to go for therapy and things like that. And it was identified that if they passed the sort of the Gillick competence, if you felt that they were well up with everything and so on and so forth, then the answer was yes, and without the adult's permission. So that was almost sort of as a safeguarding aspect. It was trying to make sure that the child was protected from perhaps the situation that was causing the issues. Very difficult ground to tread on, but there is this thing called Gillick competence, and that's how that was set up.
Thank you very much indeed. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Any more questions?
I think, Flora, you just were cut off. I guess you wanted to say something and then we lost you. Maybe you want to pick up where you have left off.
Thank you. Yes, I was trying to understand. So you are going to, Ian, you are going to train people to be coaches, right?
Yeah, we already do. Julia is one of them.
Okay. I was also interested in, in how to work all together as an umbrella, maybe, in the different kind of systems in different countries.
Yeah, okay. We have set up an umbrella system called the Adolescent and Child Coaching and Mentoring Alliance. And I will get Katrin to send out the details, the Facebook details of this. We also have a support group which meets once a month. We have visiting speakers. Fortunately, I have not been one of them, but it's a fascinating group. And our next speaker next month, it's on the second Wednesday, by the way. Our next speaker is a lady who trains dogs to be therapy dogs and to work in schools, and she is quite fascinating. So we look forward to that. Unfortunately, she couldn't. She was meant to be our first speaker in January, but sorry, our second speaker in February. But unfortunately, as things happened, she couldn't make it. So we learned about the business side of it from her business associate. But she's actually going to come and tell us how she's developing therapy dogs in schools, and we're certainly looking forward to that. So we'll pass out details, and we do have that umbrella. That is why we've got this Coaching and Mentoring Alliance and our Adolescent and Child Coaching Support Group. In order, it's not, while it flies under the Noble Manhattan umbrella, it doesn't mean to say that it's about Noble Manhattan. It's about everybody who is involved in whatever way with supporting through coaching and mentoring our growing generations.
And moreover to that, Flora, once you're part of the tribe, we have got monthly as well supervision classes. And that's really great and so helpful, because what we do there, we come with, because sometimes you're stuck and you don't know how to go on. So all the coaches are there, and if you put on the case and you get this collective, support from Raquel as well. She's the one who's mastering that for the adolescents piece. For the kids, we have another master coach. And then we do brainstorming on how to help me to coach the kid much better. And it's so, so supportive and so helpful. You can't imagine. So we're like a tribe. We help each other all the time.
Yes, we must. Thank you. Okay.
Right. Well, if there are no further questions, I think we draw this to a close. And thank you so much indeed, everybody, for attending. The fact that we've still got 10 participants must be that either they've gone to sleep or they have been so interested that they're staying with us. I hope it's the latter. But hey, there we go. So enjoy yourselves, enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody, and thank you so much indeed for coming along.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and
Have
the
a nice
weekend.
weekend. Bye bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.